So first thing I want us to do is, I just forgot in the previous tutorial to mention the fact that we may run into some issues with hand placing our UVs, and I definitely did because I just had to delete my previous recording of this tutorial, unfortunately. But if we just press spacebar to search for operations, I just want you to search for overlap. So we'll just go select overlap. And, you know, all these islands, this is all good because they are mirrored UVs. But in my instance, I accidentally left these overlapping, which completely destroyed my bakes in the previous recording. So I'm just going to press G and just move this a bit. And I know that that's going to cause that to be a bit of a problem, so I'm just going to move that back as well. And then if I check my overlap, it's just the UVs that we want to be mirrored. So that fixes that up. And actually, while I'm thinking of it, what we should do is, let's go select overlap again. For the baking process, we don't actually want to have overlapping UVs. So what we're going to do is, just with all these selected, I'm going to use B for our box select. And I'm just going to go B. I'm going to click down with my middle mouse button and just go to the middle. So I'm just going to deselect 1/2 of all the UVs. And then in the UV editor, I'm just going to go G, oops, I need to disable constrain to image bounds, G, X, and -1. Oops, why did that do that? I'm going to go Shift H then we'll go G, X, and -1. And so what that's done is it just means there won't be information of UVs overlapping with each other when we try to bake. And the only area that this is still going to be problematic is for the screws, because we overlapped several of the screws on top of one another. So if we just come to the screws UV here, I'm just going to go Shift H, and I'm just going to deselect all but one, and I'm going to go G, X, -1. And this just means that we won't have any overlapping UVs on our main UV area, which is where we get our texture baking information from, apart from right here. What's going on? That's rather strange. Just going to do that. That's probably not the best solution, but it will. I don't know how that occurred. But yes, now if we select overlap, we've only got overlapping elements off the UV sheet, which is what we want because it won't cause baking problems for us. Cool. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead, get rid of this checker modifier and get rid of the subdiv. And we just want to change our collection here. We're just going to call this main. Doesn't really matter if you don't, but just sort of helps us organize things. And I want to change this from being called cube to helmet. Then we're going to go ahead, Shift D, and duplicate this. And we're going to move this to a new collection. We'll call this baking, because we're going to do our texture baking in this collection. And we just want to keep this main helmet here, because this will be the one that we export as an FBX and take into our texturing package, whether that be Quixel Mixer, which is what I'm going to teach, because it keeps it all free for you guys to be able to learn. But you know, if you own Substance or Marmoset, you're more than welcome to take it into that as well. So we're going to leave that there. So we're going to come to this helmet, and we're going to rename this one helmet_LP. So LP stands for low poly. And we want to do this because we need to sort of modify our mesh to do all of our bakes. And what we need to do to modify our mesh is to explode the mesh. And fortunately, this is a very simple model. So what we can do is we can just go L select, and I want to select absolutely everything on the model, and at the moment it's not. Well, I just want to select the entire helmet, sorry. So I just want to change this from seam to normal. So now I've selected all that. And I don't have my move gizmo. And I just want to move this an arbitrary amount along the x-axis, so just so it's away from everything else. And fortunately, this is a very simple model, so this is all we need to actually do to explode it. And when you hear me say explode a model, it just means that nothing is intersecting with itself anymore. So all these objects are like effectively independent from one another, and they won't cast rays or anything onto one another to affect the baking process. So once we do that, that's our exploded model, and this is how we're going to bake our normal map and our ambient occlusion map, and as well as our ID map, but it doesn't really make too much impact on that. So with that, we can go ahead, we'll go Shift and D to duplicate, and we'll call this duplicate version helmet_HP, and HP in this instance stands for our high poly mesh. And it's just kind of important to name these so we know what we're selecting. So we'll go ahead, we'll chuck a subdivision surface modifier onto our high poly mesh, and we'll bring the levels and render up to 4. And this is a bit of a handy thing. I don't know how long it's been in Blender, I've never seen it before. But it tells us that there's custom normals on our mesh, and we'll get into custom normals in a second, but we don't need those for our high poly mesh, as the subdivision and the density of topology on the high poly mesh is enough to inform our normals, so we don't need any other information telling Blender how the normal should behave on our high poly mesh, so we can just go ahead and clear custom split normals data for the high poly model. And the only other thing we need to do to prepare our high poly model is we're not using subdivision surface modeling for the visor, right? We were using a weighted bevels solution instead. So just in edit mode, if we just go L to select, P and separate by selection, just with the visor on its own, we can just remove the subdivision surface modifier, and now we won't have any errors with our visor. And then with our high poly mesh, we can just Control A to apply the subdivision, select the visor, shift select the helmet, Control J, and now we've got our high poly mesh. And so we'll do something similar here for the actual helmet itself. So we'll start by removing the visor or separating it from the rest of the mesh, because we need to do some operations on our helmet. So I'm just going to go to the layout tab just so it's easier to work with. So I mentioned custom split normals before, and I won't pretend to be an expert in this because I'm still actively trying to learn about it. So first and foremost, we want to go ahead and clear the custom split normal data on our helmet. This I can explain. Pretty much as we separated meshes and rejoined them in our modeling process, Blender kept track of all that data. And so it has subsequently placed custom normal data based on those splits and joins and all that, but we don't want to take any of that into account. Next thing we want to do with all of our UV seams, and I don't understand why we do this, I know it's best practice though, and I haven't done this in the past, is we'll just select one of the edges with a seam, we'll go Shift and G, and we'll select all the similar by seams, Control E, and we will mark all of these as sharp. Now, this has affected some of our shading, but that's all good. What we're going to do next is, with that done, we're going to add a modifier, we're going to get a weighted normals modifier. And we've got a few options here, so there's face area, corner angle, and then face area and corner angle. In the past, I always figured, well, you know, this is the best of both of them, so that must work the best. I don't exactly understand what corner angle is doing to the normals, but it doesn't seem to do anything positive for us in the testing I've done. But using face area seems to work the best. And once again, I don't know why, but notice how we don't have as much extremities in the dark and light and like sort of mid-tone areas on our normals. So if I go corner angle, see how we're getting a lot darker in some of the crevices here and like a lot lighter elsewhere. Whereas we do face angle, it's a lot more flattened out. So I can't fully explain why it works, but this does seem to work quite well. But it's also removed that sharp shading information that we put on the UV seams. So what I want you to do is just keep the sharp data, and that brings that back in. And then the next thing I want you to do is, we'll leave that as is, so we'll go Control A, so we'll apply that. That's effectively more or less fixed up the normals for our low poly mesh. Then I want you to go ahead, select our visor, shift select the helmet, Control J, and we're going to go ahead and triangulate this. Now, this is definitely screwing up our normals at the moment, but there's a handy little button here. We can go keep normals, so it does its best to preserve the normals. And the quad method, I've always used beauty. I don't know if there's like a better triangulation method to use. If there is, please let me know. I've always used beauty in the past, and it seems to work well here, especially with the keep normals. And I just want to caveat one quick thing, because I have been told in the past that, triangulating your models isn't necessary anymore. But pretty much when you render something in Blender, Blender has its own triangulation algorithm. Like, even if you've got an all quads model, it will triangulate things in the background. I think in the render kernels, I think that might be the correct terminology. that's where it does the triangulation. The problem with this is if you don't want to use this asset solely in Blender, say we want to take it into a texturing software, or you want to use this in Unreal or Unity or Source Filmmaker or something, they will all have their own interpretation of triangulation. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, this is how the model should be triangulated. So then it doesn't matter what program or engine it's taken into, the triangulation will always be the same, and that means you won't get issues with your normals or anything of the sort. So I just wanted to explain that because I have sort of had a bit of back and forth with people about why I teach people to do this, and that's the reason. It's so that you're not limited to using these assets that you make just in Blender. So we'll just go Control A and we'll apply that triangulation to our model here. Cool, so with that out of the way, we can go ahead and we can bake our first normal map. And just before we do that, sorry, there is one thing I remembered. We don't want this material, this visor material that we added way back in, I think it was like episode 3, to show the reflections on the visor. And we especially don't want it on the high poly model. So we can just remove all materials from the high poly model. And we can probably do the same here. We do want to make a new material for the low poly model only. And so we'll bring in an image texture and we'll say new, we'll call this normal. And I'm going to change the width and height to be 4096, so that's a 4K texture. We don't need an alpha channel in a normal. I completely misspelt normal. And we want it to be 32-bit float because I'm pretty sure that puts it into a linear or non-color color space. And we'll say new image with this linear rec. So yeah, linear color space. And we just want to make sure that node is selected. So it's not selected there, now it is. And so we'll just bring back the visibility of our high poly mesh. And what we want to do is we want to select our high poly first and then shift select the low poly. If you're struggling to do this in the viewport shading, you can always just go into wireframe mode, select the high poly and then shift select the low poly. Just makes things easier. And then in the render properties tab here, we go to bake. And we'll change the bake type to normal. We'll go selected to active. We'll set an extrusion of 0.05 and a max ray distance of 0.1. My general rule of thumb when I set these parameters, or values, sorry, it's the extrusion should be half the distance of the max ray, or the max ray should be double that of the extrusion. I don't really have a grounding for why, it's just something I picked up a long time ago and it seems to work really quite well and takes a lot of the guesswork out of those numbers. And we'll also reduce the margins down to 4 because if you recall when we were packing the UVs initially we set a packing distance of 0.004 which to my understanding is around 4 pixel margin. So once we've done that and set that up we can just go ahead and press bake. And it might just take a little bit depending on what you're baking on. But this one's pumped it out pretty quickly here. And now we've got a nice normal bake. So if you know nothing about normals, you might look at this and go, yep, cool, that's a normal map and it looks all good. There are a few issues here, but nothing that I deem worth our time of going and fixing. And those problems are, whoops, I need to not have it in edit mode with the high poly. I'll actually go UV editing. The problems are, oops, and I'll turn off the UV stretch so we can see what's happening. Just down here, notice this green line. So normals shouldn't have colors that aren't like these purples or blues or pinks or whatever. That's a normal map. You don't want these colors here. That generally indicates an error. And this is completely correct. There is an error. What's that error? Well, it's the fact that down here, the rays that are being cast here are intersecting with one another, and that's why you're getting this discoloration. Now, if this occurred anywhere else on the model, like if we had this along this edge here or somewhere that was really quite prominent, I'd say we need to fix it. But given the fact that it's tucked away in a crevice down here that really is never going to see the light of day, and I don't expect anybody to be doing a render that focuses in on this, I'm going to leave it there because I don't really see it as being all too problematic. And at most occasions, you're going to have so much shadow built up in those occluded areas anyway. But now that we've got this normal map, we can actually see what it's doing to our mesh. So if we press Shift and Z, do a render. We don't have anything impressive here because there's no lighting information. But if we come to our world properties, and I'm just going to press Control and T on the background, and if that did nothing, that's just because you don't have Node Wrangler. So if you want that, just go to your preferences, get extensions, and just search for Node Wrangler. Or maybe it's an add-on. I'm pretty sure it comes pre-built with Blender now. Yeah. And just enable Node Wrangler. It's very, very handy. So then you can just Control T on the background. And I'm just going to pull in an HDRI. I really like this Misty Pines one. I think I got it off of HDRI Haven years and years ago. And I'm just going to set that to transparent. So, at the moment, this does not look impressive at all. It's all muddy and got weird shading and all this. But then if we plug our normal map into the normal of the principal, we have something even worse. And that's because we're missing a node. We just need our normal map node here. And now we've got something that looks very nice and crisp, right? So we've taken all that shader information from the mesh normals and gone, hey, let's do this instead. And you can really sort of show that off when you make it something really metallic and reflective like this. But there's a bit of a thing with Blender that really irks me. If we do a render with a dielectric material here, it kind of gives these weird shading artifacts. And we fixed most of them with a lot of the normal corrections that we did earlier with the custom split normals. But this area here is quite problematic. And you can just kind of notice a little black bleed along the edges here. And it does make sense, and we kind of get a bit of it in here as well, but I'm not too concerned about it because I know that's going to be a dark material anyway. So is this, but this is a little bit more prominent on the model. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to slightly modify the topology of our low poly mesh. Actually, no, sorry, we'll need to... If we're going to modify this mesh, we also need to do it on this helmet one here. I still don't have this workflow to an exact science, so... Forgive me that there are a few inconsistencies here. So let's just replicate what we did earlier. So we'll select the seams, we'll go Control E, and we will mark those with sharps. We'll do our weighted normals with sharps kept and face area. We'll apply that. And then we'll get our triangulation modifier, keep normals, and beauty, and Control A. Cool, because we want to make sure that this is the exact same as the exploded mesh, but just not exploded, right? I don't know, we might be able to... You could possibly just put the exploded mesh back together, but I kind of feel like when it comes to like bigger assets, it would just become a pain. That's why I do it like this. But there still might be a better methodology. I just need to figure out what that is. So I'm just going to shift select both the helmet LP and the helmet. And the reason I'm doing this is because we need to add a bevel to the edges that surround these little light fixtures here. Pretty much my understanding of why we're getting this error in this area is just because of the way the tangents or the surface normals are pointing with the split edges, and this being near like a 90-degree angle, and normal baking just does not like 90-degree angles. I can't remember why. There's a whole lot of technical reasons, but I know that this will fix it. And we're not going crazy on the bevels here. So, you know, if you are modeling this for a game and you've decided to optimize your mesh and all that, this is not going to destroy whatever it is you're doing, so don't worry. And so I'm just going to go Control B, drag this out a bit. It doesn't need to be anything intense. And I'm just going to give it a single segment. So we'll just do it like that. And so I can just hide the main collection. Bring our high poly mesh back in. I'm just going to go to the shading tab just so we can see. Just going to zoom in here just so we can see the change that's going to occur here. Select the high poly, select the low poly, select the normal. I'm going to hit bake. You'll notice we get this circular dependency. That's just because we're baking back over the top of this here. And we can see that that's made a change. And so then if we go ahead and check out this new normal map, we're no longer getting that bleeding on here. We might be getting a bit of an artifact there, in all honesty, which I think we are, and I've got no idea why that's occurring. I suppose the only way we could possibly help with this, because I think this is occurring because this resolves into a triangle. So let me just test something really quick. I haven't actually tested this because I didn't notice that error in my practice. So let's just see if, and we'll need to do this on the main mesh as well. So I'm going to select that helmet, this helmet. I wonder if we can do a bevel on the inside here and get that to work. Okay, I did it for all 4. Yep, cool. So I'm just going to go Control B, and I'm not going to put the internal loop because I don't think I need it on this one. Just going to do that, and let's just do another bake. Just going to test if this works. If it doesn't, obviously I'm just going to cut it out. So we'll go bake, we get that circular dependency warning again. And I don't know if that's made a change because I didn't really see anything pop through. Okay, so that's fixed it up. I can't fully explain to you why that fixes that particular error, but there we go. We've just added in that little bevel there. So by rights, you know, we could go through and we could add little bevels in here because I can see just a little bit of bleed on the edges. But I think that was the most notorious one, and just adding some bevels onto those seems to help quite well. So yeah, there you go. I'm glad I could fix that one on the spot for you guys to give you a little bit of a better asset. Cool. Alright, so we've got our normal map baked. Now, something important to do is that Blender doesn't save these automatically. So if you never save this and close Blender out, you will lose all this bake data. And you can tell that because at the moment this image has an asterisk next to it. So if we just go image, save as, I'm just going to go into my bakes folder here, and as you can see, this is all my tests. So I'm just going to delete that. Now for our normal map, let's call it normal. And we want to save this as an OpenEXR. We'll go full float and codec. I believe we want to use zip. I can't remember the difference between all the codecs, but I'm pretty sure zip is mostly the lossless file codec. And so we can save that. Cool, so that's our normal. Now let's address the ambient occlusion, because we'll do the ambient occlusion with our high poly mesh in mind. But in saying that, we don't really want to bake our ambient occlusion using this exploded mesh model here. And that's because we no longer have the interaction between all of these parts and the rest of the helmet, and ambient occlusion is sort of telling us, you know, where should we effectively fake shading on the model, or shadow, I should say. So you can bake an ambient occlusion map through here. I don't find it amazingly useful for texturing that. So what I'm going to do, and I've kind of once again forgotten part of my workflow here, because we've already applied all the modifiers to this. What we're going to do is in our backups, is I'm just going to go ahead and pull all of this out. So I'm going to shift select all of that, shift D, and I'm going to move this into the main collection. So now we've got our duplicate of it, and going to hide the actual helmet, and we're just going to configure this to be a high poly mesh. So we can just apply a mirror, we can get rid of the checker that's still on everything, apply the mirror, and we'll just keep the subdivision on. All the screws, that's fine if it doesn't have a subdivision. We just want to get rid of any of the other modifiers. The visor, we can apply the bevel and the weighted normals because that makes it high poly effectively. And then we can grab all this, we can just shift select the helmet, Control J to join it all together. And this is going to be high poly, so we can remove, well, the geometry data has already been removed, that's handy. And we can apply, we can put this subdiv on, and yes, we can also apply it. And then we can just join the visor in with the rest of the helmet, and I just saw that we still have that material there, so we'll just make sure we get rid of these because we don't want them, and I'm just going to call this HP. So now that we've got this is what we'll bake our high poly, our ambient occlusion from this high poly mesh here, because this is going to be a lot better. So we'll bring our other helmet here. Actually, we will need to call these helmet underscore LP and high poly. So I want to go H underscore LP because we've already got a helmet, and then we'll just go H underscore HP. And so we'll go back to our UV editing tab. And what's happened here? What we're going to do is we can just select both of these, and similar to the normal bake, we're going to go 0.1 for our ray distance and 0.05 for our cage extrusion. And sorry, just select ambient occlusion from here. Mine was just already selected. And we're going to have a bit of an issue here, so I'm just going to hit bake just to show you what's about to happen. Sorry, my bad. We're not rendering it, that's why. And actually, that's a great note. Ambient occlusion is going to work off of everything that's being rendered. So the baking thing here, even though we can't see it, we just want to disable the rendering capacity for it. If you can't see these render icons, just in your filters, just make sure you've got the disable and render enabled here. And just make sure you turn those off and make sure you have this one on. That's why I got that error. So we'll try bake again. Cool. And now we get something like this, and this is an absolute catastrophic mess. And the main reason is because it's really noisy, right? And so you're probably thinking like, oh, well, just crank up the samples. And you're not wrong, we definitely can do that, but it still doesn't really fix it. Like even if I go to 100 samples here, you know, you'd expect something a lot more noise-free, but we're still getting something fairly noisy. I've got no idea why, but the way to fix this is by disabling the noise thresholds in our render. So I've got no idea why that fixes it, but you disable these and it clears up the noise. So if we just bake again at 100 samples, but there you go. So it still looked a little bit noisy because we're only doing 100 samples, but you can see it is definitely cleaner than what it was before. And so, you know, we could crank this to something stupidly high. I kind of find 250 is a good balance between it taking a little bit of time, but also giving you a pretty noise-free bake. So I'll just hit bake on that one. And there we go. So obviously there's still a little bit of noise in there, but, you know, if you compare it to what we had originally, this is infinitely better. And the reason this is great is because we're going to use this to influence our, we'll use it to influence our edgeware, which is a big one, to tell it, you know, where not to place edgeware. But we're also going to be using it for things like dirt and grunge buildup. And it's just really great for telling where that should and should not go. So once we've got that, we can just go image, save as. You can see I've already done some tests here, so I'm just going to delete those. We'll save it as a PNG, just RGB, because it doesn't have an alpha channel, 16 and 100% compression, and I'm just going to go AO and save as. Cool, and with that we can just go ahead, we don't need the main anymore, and we'll just bring our baking back in. And we can go ahead and start to work on, I don't know why it's showing that. We've just got one final map that we need to bake, and this is going to be where Text Tools really shines for us, because it's got this really handy color ID tool right here. So let's just think about the colors that we're going to need to use here. So I'm just going to pull up one of the old reference images, and I really don't want to be seeing the UVs. Cool. So what do we have? We've got red, we've got black, we've got like these white silvery bits, so that's 3 materials. We've got the visor, so that's 4 materials. And then we're going to need a different material for the glass on our light modules. So that makes 5. And then a 6th material for an extra mesh that we need to add in that's going to emit light. So we're going to have 6 different materials. So in this color ID here, we'll just change this from 5 code to 6. And let's just make this like a magenta, pinky purple sort of thing. Cool. All right. So why I like Text Tools is mainly because of how easy it is to assign ID masks. So let's go ahead. Let's make the visor our green mesh. So we'll just assign the color here. And if I just turn this off, so we can see the visor is now green. And this is handy when it comes to separating the materials and all that when we're texturing. And so then we can use the seam selection with L again. So I'm going to use the blue material to represent the parts of the helmet that are going to be black when we're texturing. So everything on the inside here, that's all going to be black. These little bits on the side and the back of the helmet are all going to be black. I might just pull in a side view of the helmet so I can see what's happening. And I'm just going to go image editor so I'm not seeing the UVs over everything. Whoops, oh, so I can't do, okay, righto. I might, in that case, pull in a separate window and I'll just change this to image editor just so I can see what's happening here. Cool. And so we can just assign that. And I know we can assign the colors through here, but I kind of feel like the vertical menu is a bit more finicky and not as intuitive. So the tube is all going to be black, and the underside of the helmet, all of that. And then these little bits in here as well. So the UVs are a bit annoying for this area because we can't just L select. I did have a version of the UVs where I was going to cut these out, but I decided it was better to just leave them as a part of the UVs, which just makes it a little bit trickier to assign materials, but that's alright. Just get that, and unfortunately we can't select mirror because our object origin is misplaced, and I think it's more effort to adjust it than just manually select all this. So we'll do that. We'll assign these as the black material. And we'll have to make some corrections to put that silver color in as well. But for the most part, that's pretty good. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go L select the entire helmet. And then in the materials here, I'm just going to deselect the blue. We shouldn't have anything else on it. And then I'm going to assign the red to it, so that will be our primary color that we put on the helmet, which is kind of fitting given our reference image is red, so that kind of helps. And then this little semicircle part here, this should be that silver color, so we'll need a different material ID on this. So I'm just holding down Control to select the shortest path here. And we'll use the yellow for this. Oops, sorry, should do that. So make that yellow. And we'll just do the same on the other side. Oops. Maybe I should have done this when we still had the mirror modifier on. I'm not sure. Probably. Yeah, we'll leave that little indent being silver. Cool, so I think that breaks up the colors pretty well, and then we also just need to do it for the little helmet attachment at the front. Oh, actually, what are the tubes on the side? So these little tubes here, these are black. So that will be the blue color. These here are meant to be black as well. So those will blend in. The screws are black, cool. And then we'll go front view. Alright, so the little doohickey in the middle here, the little circle, that should be that silver color, which we've made yellow. And then this one's a bit of a weird one to assign colors to, just because of the bevels and deciding where the bevels should retain their color and not. So let's see. I think I'll select this. I'll select the outer side. See, this is just the annoying part. So I think we should probably, but that's not really straight, is it? I think I might just leave the whole thing as black and then maybe just make these on the outside that silver color. I think that will still do a fine job. It's just with the bevels that we placed, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to split the colors up. So yeah, we'll just leave that like that. And I think that captures just about everything we need for the ID colors. Oh, actually, no, sorry. The only thing we've missed, my bad, is just the front here. So we did an inset on these whenever we made them. I can't remember what episode. Specifically so that we would have something to assign a color ID to. I hope I explained that at the time. If not, it's not the end of the world. All you'd need to do is just go edit the mesh, rebake your normals, and you'd be back up to scratch. So we're just going to assign this with this light blue color here. And then what we'll do, so let's just go ahead, let's just select these light blue colors. And what I'll do is let's go to our normal orientation. We'll go individual origins. I'm going to go Shift and D to duplicate them. And then I'm just going to go full screen here, so I just press Shift and Spacebar to do that. I'm going to push these back a little bit on the normal Z-axis. And I'm going to scale these up. So these are going to be our light sources, right? And I'm going to assign it this magenta color. And the only thing we're going to need to do here, so I told a lie earlier, it would seem, we're going to need to adjust where these UVs are because we don't want these UVs overlapping with the existing ones. So I'm just going to press U, unwrap, and just scale these down and just place them somewhere arbitrarily on the mesh. And these don't need normal information or anything because these are just going to be emitting light and nothing else. And so I'm actually going to select these, Shift and D, P, separate by selection. And I'm going to move these back to our main helmet because we're going to need these on that helmet. So I'm just going to select that. I'm going to remove all the IDs, Shift select our helmet, Control and J. And now we've got these integrated, which will make a lot more sense as to how they work and what they're doing when we finish the texturing process. And I've lost my train of thought. Finish the texturing process and set up all of our materials. And I'm just thinking on this lip, should this... I think it'll take a little bit more manual work, but I think it's going to be worth it. I'm going to make this lip on the inside here, running down, and I might do the inside of this as well. I'm just going to make this red. I just kind of feel like it will look a little bit nicer, because I think I did that for the preview materials for all of the thumbnails on the modeling series. Sign that. Oops, and I don't want to do it up there, so we'll make that blue. Yeah, I think that just gives it a better sort of breakup profile. And you're not really going to notice that split. Oh, actually, I mean, we could just... Nah, I reckon we make it consistent. I reckon on the inside here, I reckon we make this red as well. Okay, I don't know why I can't do it through text tools. Yeah, I think that sort of makes it stand out a little bit better. Cool, alright, I'm happy with that. Actually, I'm just thinking, do I want this at the bottom here to be red? Does that kind of... Nah, definitely leave that like that. Alright, cool. Sorry, I know this is taking a while, I'm just being pedantic. And I can see a bit of an issue there, so we'll just assign that. It's always good to just do a final check and make sure everything's all in working order. These little bits of detail here definitely shouldn't be red, nor should those screws. They should all be black bits of detail. So I can just see and select all of the screws very easily. And I missed part of that little floater mesh. We can assign those as black. And with that, let's just make sure this is all good. So I think the helmet is broken up properly. Actually, I don't like where these blue parts are, so I kind of feel like this, oops, this little top sort of faces here. I feel like that should be red. Anything around the back there as well, I wonder. I'm just thinking. We'll get the side view really quickly. It's red down here as well. Alright, so what we should do is just all up and along here. I think this should also be red. Just because otherwise I kind of feel like there's a bit of a jarring stop between the colours, and it's not really clearly defined on the actual model geometry why those colours would shift. So we'll just do that. Once again, I'm just holding down Control to select the shortest path. That's why you'll notice if I select too far there, it sort of selects areas I don't want it to. Cool, do that, and we can just assign, just do it there because I've closed out the other panel. So I got that. Cool, so I think that's a bit better. And just on the top here, I've just noticed on this little piece here, this is all using the base color that we'll use to colour the actual colourable parts of the helmet, and I don't want that, so I'm just going to go ahead, deselect the yellow part, and we'll just assign this blue so that shares that black material. And I think that should just be about everything. And so then just to bake this, we'll just use text tools, and as I've said, text tools isn't fully supported anymore. So, you know, we're doing an ID mask, so you'd think we'd do a material ID bake, which, you know, would make sense. But you'll notice here, if we bake this, all of our colours are completely wrong, which is not what we want. And I'm just going to merge this down. And that's just a result of text tools not being properly supported anymore. So what we want to do to get our material ID to bake properly is we want to use this base color here. I'm pretty sure. No, sorry. Diffuse, even I forget. And I screwed up this tutorial earlier, so I've already had to go ahead and do it once. I'm just redoing this. So if we just go ahead and hit bake, we'll pretty much get this result over on the left here. Actually, it's saying there's a circular dependency, so I'm just going to remove all these. So there's not. I'm just going to go ahead, press bake again, do it properly. And now we've got this result here, which has taken all of the color data that we've just placed onto our model here and transferred it into our ID mask. So we can just go ahead, as with the other ones, image, save as. I'm just going to find where I've put my bake. And as you can see, I've already got my ID mask because I screwed up the tutorial once, so we'll just call it ID mask. I'll just actually delete my version. So we'll call it ID mask. We'll go PNG, RGBA. Actually, we can just do RGB because it doesn't have an alpha. 16 and 100% compression. Save image. And now we can get into exporting our mesh. And so we just need to export the model, but we don't want to export this exploded version here. So we can just go ahead, we can turn our baking version off, we'll bring our main back in, and this is what we want to export. So I have had to re-record this a few times, so if there are any materials on this version of the helmet, just make sure to go remove them because we don't want to export with any material data. Then just make sure you select the helmet, that's important, and we'll go File, Export, FBX, and then as you can see I've already tried to do this once before. So yeah, I'll just call this recon_helmet so I know what it is. And an important thing to do, make sure you limit selected objects. Otherwise, if you don't have that enabled and you don't have the helmet selected here, you'll export everything in the blend file as an FBX, which we don't want. So just make sure you've got that selected, export the FBX, and then just to test that that's worked and retained all of the normals and everything, we can just hide our helmet. We'll go import, FBX, FBX, and we'll just bring in the recon helmet, and there we go. That's perfect with all the triangulation and everything there. So cool. In the next episode we can take this over into Quixel Mixer and we can begin texturing it.